Hare Krishna everyone.
Evo.
Welcome to today's Sunday feast program. We'll start with a short Jai Radha Mother. Jai Radha Mother, mantras. Om
ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुक्तापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपां साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Thank you again for coming. Today's Sunday Feast program. I want to thank the ISKCON of Bergen County Management, His Grace Ramchandra Prabhu, Prabhu, for giving me this service. To speak and to share my realizations. We'll be reading from the Bhagavad Gita. I just want to start with a little bit of glorification of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's 8 very beautiful verses by Adi Shankaracharya called the Gita Mahatmya. The third verse is Maline mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrit gītāmrita snānam samsāra malanāshanam. So the translation is, one may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath with water, but if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges waters of the Bhagavad Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. So there is external cleanliness and there is internal cleanliness. To keep the body clean from the outside, one must take a bath. And to purify the body from the inside, one must read the Bhagavad Gita. Sakrit Gītāmrita Snānam. Even a little bit of reading the Bhagavad Gita daily can purify us of our anarthas, of lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, and illusion. Right? There is a saying that tan shuddh hota hai स्नान से, धन शुद्ध होता है दान से, मन शुद्ध होता है हरि के नाम से, और बुद्धि शुद्ध होती है दिव्य ज्ञान से. So, in the previous verse, we saw that Rajvidya, Rajguhyam, Pavitram Idam Uttamam, Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmam. What is the meaning of Pratyaksha Avagamam? Directly perceived. Yes. So results are perceived. We can see the results in our life. I can speak for myself before I came to ISKCON versus after I came to ISKCON. So, for internal purification, one must read the Bhagavad Gita. So today we'll try to understand who the driving force is. Is there a driving force behind Prakriti? Is there a driving force behind material nature? Is Prakriti automatic? Or is there a super intelligent person controlling Prakriti or material nature? Read from chapter 9, verse number 10. You all can repeat after me. मया अध्यक्षेण प्रकृति
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते सचराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
मया अध्यक्षेण प्रकृति
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते सचराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
मायाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते सचराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः श्रूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते
मध्याक्षेण प्रकृति
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते सचराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते च चराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः
सूयते सचराचरम्
श्रूयते सचराचरम्
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
जगद्विपरिवर्तते
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Purport. It is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna also states in the Bhagavad Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The Father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature. They come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated and everything is created immediately. Because he glances over material nature, there is undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord, but he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. This example is given in the Smriti. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person. Yet, the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. In summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Lord cannot do anything. Yet, the Supreme Personality is detached from all material activities. So we all know the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. So any Bhagavad Gita verse you pick, it will be about one or more of these 5 topics. So which of these 5 topics do you think is being talked about here in this verse? Maya Adhyakshana Prakriti. Prakriti. Ishvara. Very good. So Ishvara and Prakriti. Right? So Krishna is starting to talk about his Jiva. Yes. Very nice. Yes. Actually 3. So Krishna is starting to talk about his relationship with the material world in this verse. In the 15th chapter, in the 7th verse, Krishna says, Mamevamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. So Krishna in that verse is talking about his relationship with the jivas. Here he's talking about his relationship with the material world. Does Krishna have to do anything with the material world? Or is he just busy playing his flute? So we'll try to understand this. Is Prakriti automatic? Right? Most people you read, they will say that Prakriti is automatic. Right? You feed grass to a cow and the cow gives milk. This appears to be automatic. So to such a person, if you ask, how about feeding grass to a bull? Is the bull going to give milk? That person would say no. And you would ask why? And that person will say, because the cow is made in that way. You should ask that person, like, who made the cow in that way? Okay? So we see the rising and the setting of the sun. The sun rises each day at a fixed time. Right? The seasons are changing so beautifully. Each season is producing symptoms unique to that season. Right? There is fragrance in the flowers. When you plant a seed, the seed doesn't have any fragrance. The soil doesn't have any fragrance. The water does not have any fragrance. Where is the fragrance coming from? There's some questions one must ask himself. So, even though Prakriti appears to be automatic, somebody has programmed it to make it behave in the way it is behaving. Right? So, how did this universe come about? Right? This is a question that has been bothering scientists and philosophers since a very long time. Right? So, even science accepts that this universe is not eternal, that it has a beginning, right? But science believes that this universe came about from an explosion, right? They call it a Big Bang, right? There was a point of single singularity where there was infinite pressure, infinite density, infinite temperature. And suddenly there was a bang. You're sitting in this nice space, the ISKCON of Bergen County. How many of us believe that this center came about from an explosion? An explosion cannot result in creation, right? An explosion will only result in destruction. Right? So does a lump of matter organize itself into a building automatically? Or do we require an intelligent being to organize lumps of matter into a building? Right? Which faith is more reasonable? Right? So people question, did Krishna really lift the Govardhan hill with the pinky finger of his left hand? Right? So it is like an ant that is crawling on a table. It sees a glass piece, right? The ant, what is the ant going to think? That this glass piece is impossible for anyone to lift, right? So what is impossible for the ant is not impossible for the human being. We humans do it all the time, nonchalantly, moving a glass piece, right? So we must understand that God is infinitely powerful in us. He is the source of everyone's strength. Balam balavatam chaham. Krishna says. But we try to apply our logic in things that are inconceivable to us. Right? What is inconceivable is not irrational. Right? There is a difference. Right? We try to analyze things with our tiny brains. Right? The brain has two sides, the left side and the right side. But the funny thing is, on the left, nothing is right. On the right, nothing is left. So, also very important point to understand is that we humans have finite good karma, right? Above us, there are more advanced beings, right? We have finite good karma, so we have limited access to the universe. Say in an office, there is a clerk and there is an accountant. If the clerk is trying to access a folder from the accounting department, when he double clicks on that folder, he is going to get access denied. Right? So we have not been given full access to the universe. That is a very important point which you must understand. So how did the universe come into existence? Right? Answer to this question is clearly given in the Bhagavad Gita 9.7. Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau visrajamyaham. At the end of Brahma's life, this universe is destroyed. In the start of Brahma's life, the creation process begins. So clear-cut answers are there in the Bhagavad Gita. Again, this question, right, how did we come into being? Right? So, can anything come from nothing? Right? That is a question to ask. So, once Radhanath Maharaj was asked by a student of mathematics that, Maharaj, is there a mathematical model to describe the universe? And Maharaj said, I am not a mathematician, but I know Einstein is a great mathematician. He was one of the greatest mathematicians of the century. And Einstein said, there is no way the universe can mathematically exist the way it is unless there is a supreme brain behind it. So Maharaj said that it is easier for me to accept Einstein's mathematical genius than to try and become a mathematician myself. So where did we come from? Bhagavad Gita again answers this question. Mam eva amsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. The living entities are my eternal fragmental parts. So we all came from Krishna. We did not come from nothing, right? We all have to have a source. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavu mattah sarvam pravartate. I am the source of every living entity. I am the source of everything. Everything emanates from me. Right? So people say that if God created everything, who created God? Does God have an origin? So by tracing back the origin of things, the point where we stop, that point is God. If God were to have an origin, that origin would be God. That is the definition of God. Sarva karana karanam. So he is the cause of all causes. So why are scientists trying to find an answer to this question? How did this universe originate? Where did we come from? Why are these two questions bothering scientists so much? Why? What is the goal of science? Anyone? What is the goal of science? We see the scientific advancements. We see the air conditioner, the car, this microphone. We see the cell phone. What is the goal of science?
Material comfort.
Correct, yes, comfort. To make material life easy, to make life comfortable, right? But we see from the scriptures, King Chitraketu, right? King Chitraketu was like the Jeff Bezos of his time. He had a super comfortable life. He had all the opulences that one could dream of, right? But he was miserable. Why? Because he did not have sons. He did not have a child, right? So he was. We see that there is three miseries, right? Adi bhautik, adhyatmik, and adi daivik. So he was bothered by the miseries caused by his mind, right? Adhyatmik klesh. So he married one wife. He married a second wife. He married a third wife. He married 1 crore wives. He was the original crorepati. So he was blessed by Angira Muni and Narad Muni, and he finally got a child. But after he got a child, was he happy? No, because the other queens became envious of Queen Kritadyuti and they poisoned the child, and the child died. So misery is caused by other living entities. Adi bhautik klesh. So if the goal of science is to make life comfortable, and if King Chitraketu led the most comfortable life, what was missing in his life? Spirituality, right? Koi tan se dukhi, koi man se dukhi, dukhi dhan ka das, thode thode sab dukhi, sukhi shyam ka das. Right? So science and spirituality, they are not contradictory, but they are complementary. They both have a place in our lives. Right? Science makes things better, spirituality makes people better. Together they make the world better, right? So very famous quotes by Martin Luther King. Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power, right? We have guided missiles but misguided men. So there was this person who was wearing this t-shirt which had in the front, it was written, "Do not disturb." On the back, already disturbed. Yes, on the back was written already disturbed. Right? So, yes, I'm not trying to minimize the importance of science in our lives. Science is a great blessing. Right? I'm able to speak using this microphone thanks to science. Right? I'm able to project my slides using this projector thanks to science. So science is neutral. It depends on the consciousness of the person using that equipment. Right? So coming back to the verse, right? We live in this material world, right? Krishna says, Maya adhyakshena prakriti. I am controlling the material nature. I am supervising this material nature. So this material world is the world of matter, right? Can it act on its own, right? What is matter and what is spirit? Krishna gives this classification very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? In 7.4 he says, Bhumirapanalo vayu, kham mano buddhi revacha, ahankara iti yame bhinna prakriti rashtaka. Earth, air, fire, water, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego. These 8 constitute my separated material energies. And what is spirit? If this is matter, what is spirit? He gives this definition in 7.5. Apareyamitastvanyam prakritim viddhim me param jiva bhuta mahabaho yedam dharayate jagat. Besides these separated material energies of mine is the living entity who is exploiting the resources of this material nature, of this inferior material nature. Right? So the soul is spiritual, right? But earth, air, fire, water, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego, these are matter. So we live in this material world. What is the definition of material world? Material world means the world of matter. Right? Can the material world act on its own? No. So what is the difference between matter and spirit? Consciousness, yes. Correct. So, very nice. Yes, matter is perishable. Matter cannot desire, right? If there's a dead person lying in front of me, and if I put a rasgulla on the tongue, that person is not going to be able to perceive pleasure. Why? Because the tongue is material, the brain is material, right? There is no spirit. So matter cannot desire, matter cannot feel happiness or distress, pleasure or pain, right? If I have a car, I know that car has wheels and the wheels are capable of moving at a very high speed, right? But they will not be able to move at a high speed unless and until there is a spirit, there is a person who is energizing the car, who is switching on the ignition and pressing the accelerator pedal. Right? The car is not capable of moving on its own, right? If I switch on the bulb, and if there is a child, the child will say, I'm pressing the switch, electricity is automatic. But a sane person will know that behind the electric line is a power plant, and inside that power plant there is a person, there is an engineer who is carefully supervising the operations, making sure the equipment is in order. Right? So Prakriti cannot act on its own unless and until it is empowered by Purusha. That Purusha is Krishna. Which is why Krishna says, Maya adhyakshena Prakriti. What is the meaning of adhyakshena? Adhi means under, and aksha means eyes. Right? So under his eyes, everything is happening. Under his supervision, everything is happening. So by his mere glance, material nature is activated. Right? So from the purport of 9.10, we see that Prabhupada writes that at the creation, the material energy is let loose as Mahat Tattva. Right? Mahat Tattva is inactive. It has all the ingredients. But unless and until the Lord, as his first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu enters, material nature remains inactive. So once Mahavishnu enters, he breathes out innumerable universes, and into each universe the Lord again enters as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He still further manifests himself as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So Krishna is seated in our hearts as Paramatma, as Upadrashta Hanumanta, right? So he enters into everything, which is why this material world is capable of moving. Right? So Krishna says, Maya adhyakshena prakriti, and then what happens? Suyate sacharacharam. Once material nature is activated, Suyate Sacharacharam means material nature is manifesting so many moving and non-moving beings, right? So we see this verse from Padma Purana, very famous verse. Jalajanava lakshani sthavara laksha vimshati krimayo rudra sankhyak pakshinam dasha lakshatam trimsha lakshani pashaya chatur lakshani manusha. 8.4 million species, right? Out of which moving, there is chara and there is achara. Chara is moving, 6.4 million moving and 2 million non-moving species. Right? So why are there 4 lakh species of humans? We all look same from the outside. What is different in us? What is this classification based on? The 4 lakh species of human beings. Consciousness. Yes. Right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Dhumen avriyate vahanir yatha darsho malena cha yatholmen avrito garbhas tatha tenedam avritam." Just like fire is covered by smoke, just like a mirror is covered by dust, and just like an embryo is covered by the womb, similarly the intelligence of the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. Right? So we all have different degrees of lust. Right? The difference, from the outside we may all look same as humans, but the difference is in our subtle body. It is in our mental makeup. We all have a different mental makeup. We all have a different degree of lust covering us. We all have a different psychophysical nature. Right? So that is why there is a classification even amongst human beings. Right? So someone asked Srila Prabhupada that, "Swamiji, why do you keep traveling across these different countries?" Srila Prabhupada said, "To stop you from traveling in different bodies." Maharaj, his father was a millionaire and he visited Srila Prabhupada, and with folded hands he begged Srila Prabhupada, "Swamiji, here is a blank check. Please take it and please give my son back." Giriraj Maharaj said to Srila Prabhupada, "Srila Prabhupada, keep this blank check and keep me." Srila Prabhupada smiled and looked at Giriraj Maharaj and said, "No, you must go." So Giriraj Maharaj went with his father, and his father had Giriraj Maharaj talk to a psychiatrist. He was thinking that his son had a problem. So the psychiatrist started asking him questions in a closed room. "What is your problem in life?" Giriraj Maharaj said, "Janma mrityu dukha dosham dosham." This is my real problem. Changing body is my real problem. Getting old, getting diseased is my real problem. Every question the psychiatrist was asking, Giriraj Maharaj was answering, quoting a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. After a few minutes, the psychiatrist came outside of the room and met Giriraj Maharaj's father, and he said, "If I spend a little more time with your son, I will become a Hare Krishna." So it's the power of association, right? Lava Mata Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi. So we see that everything in this world is perishable, as Mataji mentioned, that matter perishes. Right? We all know of the 7 wonders of the world. Right? And what is funny about this 7 wonders of the world is that this list keeps changing. There is only one original 7 wonders of the world remaining. Does anybody know what that original 7 wonder is? No. Yes, the pyramids. Yes, that is the original 7 wonders of the world. So, Jagat Viparivartate. This is the function of Prakriti. So people often say, "Prabhuji, how do I see the hand of God in nature?" So Krishna is giving this answer in the Bhagavad Gita again. By looking at Krishna's wonderful arrangements in the material world. Right? Krishna is assisting us in our endeavors for dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Krishna is providing us arrangement at the cosmological level, at the terrestrial level, at the physiological level, and at the spiritual level. At the cosmological level, he provides us the light from the sun. The sun is not just a source of light, it is also the source of nutrition. Plants are able to synthesize food using the process of photosynthesis, using light from the sun. It is by divine arrangement that mud is transformed into mangoes. Right? This is the power of the sun. Today is Super Bowl Sunday, or it is, for us it is Hari Bowl Sunday. So we pay thousands of dollars to light up a stadium just for one night, but Krishna is providing us the light from the sun free of cost. Also, an important fact is that the amount of energy that the sun emits in 1 second, the amount of energy the sun emits in 1 second is more than the amount of energy consumed by the human species throughout its entire history. That is the power of the sun. So Krishna says, Yat aditya gatam tejo jagat bhasayate akhilam Yat chandramasi yat charno tat tejo vidhi mamakam. This is Krishna's arrangement at the cosmological level. At the terrestrial level, he is keeping the planets in orbit. Gam avishya cha bhutani. Because Krishna, as his Purusha avatar expansion, enters into each planet, into each atom. The planets stay afloat in space. Right? Gam avishya cha bhutani dharayami aham ojasa. Pushnami cha ushadhi sarva somo bhut prasatmaka. I become the light of the moon which gives taste to the vegetables. This is Krishna's arrangement at the terrestrial level. At the physiological level, he is helping us digest our food. Aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam deham ashrita pranapana samayukta pachamyannam chaturvedam. Aham vaishvanaro bhutva. Vaishvanar is the presiding deity of digestion. Krishna becomes Vaishvanar and helps us digest our foods. But the only time we think of our digestion is when it is not working. Right? But when it is working, we must still think and thank Krishna. Krishna, thank you for helping me digest my food stuff. So we all know of Newton, right? He discovered the law of gravity. Yes. Right? So he simply discovered the law of gravity, but the law was already there. Right? Behind a law, there has to be a lawmaker. That lawmaker is Krishna. Apples were still falling even before Newton discovered the law of gravity, right? So he wrote a very wonderful note that this most beautiful system of the sun, planets and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. So Krishna says Gama Vishyacha Bhutani, right? So he is keeping all these planets in orbit, right? We all know of this Apollo 13 mission, which was NASA's third mission to send man to the moon, right? So everyone had very high hopes, but there was a problem. A few hours into the flight, there was an oxygen tank explosion, and there was dangerously high levels of carbon dioxide buildup in the spacecraft. It was highly unlikely that the astronauts would return back on Earth. When a message was relayed to the astronauts asked everyone on Earth to pray for their safe return. America was on a standstill. Everyone prayed for the safe return of the astronauts. The Pope urged everyone to pray. So it is not surprising to see that when scientists fail in their attempts to make something special, they consciously or unconsciously pray to God for help. So, we've invented a helicopter, right? And it was invented just maybe a few decades back. But Krishna is making helicopters since time immemorial. Mosquitoes, yes. But the helicopter has a flaw. The helicopter needs a helipad to land and take off. Does a mosquito require a helipad? The mosquito can land like this, suck blood and take off. So this is the artistic creation of Krishna. Krishna has been making helicopters since time immemorial. That is why one should meditate upon Krishna as one who knows everything. Right? Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anoraniyam Samanusmaredya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasah Parastha. So why is this knowledge important? Right? This is Aishwarya Dhyan, this is the opulence of the Lord. Right? An average person in India, if you ask him about Krishna, he will say, yes, I know Krishna. Krishna lifted the Govardhan hill, Krishna killed so many demons, and Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. But this mere knowledge is not enough. Information plus devotion will lead to transformation. Mere information will not lead to transformation. Right? And devotion comes from what? Devotion comes from hearing about Krishna's opulence. It comes from hearing about Krishna's Aishwarya. Right? When Srila Prabhupada was on an airplane and an air hostess saw Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada had his eyes closed and she asked, Swamiji, why are you so serious? Srila Prabhupada said, because Krishna is so great. So a devotee on the inside is always meditating on the greatness of Krishna. On the outside, a devotee is always blissfully chanting, delight in such pleasures. And then the process of rectification starts. So the jiva realizes that I must not look for happiness, I must look for service. Happiness is a byproduct. Happiness is a byproduct of service. I must look for service. I have been given certain talents. I must strive to use those talents in Krishna's service. What we are is Krishna's gift to us. What we are is Krishna's gift to us. What we become is our gift to Krishna. So we must try to identify what our talents are and try to use them in Krishna's service. So what is the implication of this verse for us? Maya adhyakshena prakriti. Krishna is saying the material world is working under my supervision. For the karmis, Krishna is dispassionately overseeing. He is not interfering in their lives. Right? But for the bhaktas, he is passionately involved. He is hands-on. For the karmis, he lets the law of karma run its course. But for the bhaktas, Krishna gives this assurance. Man mana bhavam bhakto, madhyaji mam maskuru, mam evaishyasi satyam te. For sure you will come back to me. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I will interfere in your karma. I can alter it. Surrender unto me. 8.15 Krishna says, Ma upetya punarjanma dukkhalayam shashvatam. So he's saying that yes, this material world is a place of suffering, but Krishna is not focusing on the suffering aspect. He is focusing on the potency of bhakti to take us beyond this material world. And bhakti means doing these four things: A, B, C, and D. Association. A for association. What is association? Association is not just physical proximity, we coming together. No. Association means the transfers of desires. Transfer of desires means desires in spiritual life are not linear, they are triangular. If I see a Bhagavad Gita kept in front of me, I will not get the desire to read it. Unless and until I see somebody reading the Bhagavad Gita, relishing the Bhagavad Gita, and applying the Bhagavad Gita in his life. So desires in spiritual life are triangular, which is why we need association of devotees. Devotees who are relishing the Bhagavad Gita. Right? We do sadhu sangha, our destination is Golok Dham. We do Sam sangha, our destination is Korea Dham. So, books, be for books. Page by page, become a sage. Before we age, let's escape this cage. Right? Srila Prabhupada said, if my disciples don't read my books, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down. So this is very important, reading Prabhupada's books. Right? Madhav Prabhu is in the field of marketing, and he knows that to sell a product, you have to know the product inside out, how it works, what are the competing products. So if we read, we will feel the need to distribute. Right? So we must read Srila Prabhupada's books. C is for chanting. Right? What is chanting? It is our prayer to Krishna. Krishna, please keep me engaged in your service. Right? For a devotee, the greatest fear is not the fear of death. For a devotee, the greatest fear is the fear of forgetting Krishna. I came to ISKCON when I was 30 years old. And I was in Parsippany for almost 3 years. I was totally oblivious. I did not know there was something called ISKCON or devotee association. So I can attest to the fact that life for me was very different before I became a devotee. Right? So this Hare Krishna mantra is our prayer to Krishna. Krishna, please give me the strength to serve you. Right? And final D is diet of Krishna Prasad. Krishna, you are so kind. Krishna bado dayamoy. Right? Krishna does not say, stop eating. Go sit on top of a mountain, wear orange robes, put sacred lines on your forehead and stop eating. No, he has given us such nice prasad to honor. Right? Creation again happens, but we start off from where we left. Right? So for example, I do my work during the day and I sleep during the night. In the night I forget everything, but the next day I start from where I left. Right? So this cycle of creation and annihilation is happening. It is an ongoing process. So we start off from where we left. I hope that answers the question.
Not exactly that we get the same body that we had at the end of the, but as Prabhupada said, it's based on our desire and our actions. So we may have, when the creation ended, we may have had a human body. We may start off in a hog's body, based on our...
Right, based on what we desire and what we deserve.
level of consciousness.
It's like inhalation never happened. This is like a continuous
It's just a sleep state, yes.
sleep state.
Hare Krishna, Rohan Prabhu. So, very nice class, and I would have one comment. You are an all-rounder. You are best in everything, the best of kirtans, the best of singing, the best of lectures, and you have all the skills. So, may Krishna bless you and fulfill all your desires.